Hello future programmers, welcome back to our Python series. Today, we are unraveling a cornerstone of programming, the art of repetition using loops. We often encounter tasks that need similar actions repeated multiple times. Instead of writing them one by one, loops allow us to perform this in a smart and efficient manner. In this series, we will explore two of Python's mainstay, the for loop and the while loop. Let's dive right into the for loop. It's a favorite tool for a lot of us Python programmers. In the for loop, we have two main parts, the variable and the element. The variable captures each item from the element, which is the sequence we're iterating over. So the syntax for the for loop would be for variable in element. Right? And here's where you execute the code. Okay. Code that deals with the variable. The variable takes on each value in the element one by one. And then within the loop, we act on that variable. So it's very important that you declare and use the variable that you have declared. So let's have an example for the list. For the list, let's say for example you want to iterate over a list of fruits. So for fruit in apple, banana, cherry, we print in the fruit. Okay. In this particular case, fruit is the variable and the element that we are iterating over is the list of fruits. So here in the second part of the code, the action is print and it uses the variable we have declared in the first part or in the first line of the for loop. Let's try it for the strings. For the strings, let's say for letter in Python, which is a string, print letter. In this particular case, what the code will do is that it will iterate over in this particular element, which is a string, and because that element is composed of letters, then it will take P and print P, take Y, then print Y, take T, and so on and so forth. And there you have it. But one of the things that we're also using a lot in Python is actually coding or going over the for loop using the range. So in this particular case, what we can do is for I in range, let's say 3, we print I. This is actually a very common thing that programmers do to declare the variable I. And of course, for the range, we all know that Python starts with the index 0. That's why it starts to print with 0. And usually, the number inside the range argument, that's excluded. So what you have here is 0, 1, and 2. Switching gears, let's discuss the while loop. The while loop continues its block of code as long as the condition remains true. So this is the syntax, while and the condition. The while loop continues its block of code, which is this one, as long as this condition remains true. It's actually very simple, but it is with a catch. You must always ensure that at some point, the condition will become false. Otherwise, what you will have is what we call infinite loop. And this will make your program run indefinitely and may crash your program. So let's have some examples. So in this particular case, this is what we call a counter. So you have here count plus 1. We initiate the variable count with 1. And now we start our while loop with the word while. And while count is less than or equal to 5, it should print the count. So what this is really saying, based from the syntax that we have discussed earlier, is that while this value or this variable count is less than 5, then we should continue to print that value or to continue to print that variable. Now, to ensure that this block of code will terminate at some point, we have to do something to make count greater than 5, because that is the only time that this condition will be false. In that case, what we should do is to increment it by 1. So in this line of code ensures that every time it enters the while loop, we add a value of 1 to the count, so that if it reaches 6, the whole block of code will terminate and you don't have an indefinite loop or an infinite loop. So there, we're executing the code, we have that. So the code stopped because this continues to be true if the count is still equal to 5. Now let's have an example using string length. So let our word be equal to Python, and of course our index start with 0. So while the index is less than the length of the word, we should print word index. This is actually very similar to our example earlier, where we are trying to print each letter of the word in Python, but in this particular case we're using this code. This should be while. You're using this code to print each of the letter from the word Python. So to ensure that at some point the code will terminate, or another way of saying that is that this condition will become false, is to add in a value of 1 to the index. And there you have it. We've walked through the core principles of Python's for and while loop for today. And from repetition in lists to the conditional nature of while loops, it's evident that loops play a very important role in making our coding tasks simpler and much more efficient. And in our next session, let's venture into Python functions. That's another very important piece to allow us to organize and reuse our code effectively. So now that you've started to grasp the importance and the concept of loops, you're on the right path to mastering functions too. If you found this discussion on loops helpful, please consider supporting me with a like. And for more Python insights, don't forget to subscribe. We've got a lot more in store for you. Thanks for spending your time with us today. We look forward to seeing you until the next session. Until then, happy coding!